salmon was the main staple you would eat throughout the entire year. In fact, the Russians, when they came through and they'd never quite seen anything quite like Alaska before, they made a special rule that you can eat fish any day of the year. So anyway, so she sent her children, to school in the winter, but in the summertime, they all came and helped in the fish camp because that was going to be what they had to eat all winter long, which is about at least 6 months. But in the meantime, she was married, obviously, and her husband was a priest. He was the priest of the village church in Kwethluk, and was basically a very traditional Orthodox priest. And served the services and visit the people and, a lot of pastoral care. But Mother Olga entered into his ministry, and she became a very active partner in that ministry. Now, there's an old Russian saying that Matushka, that's the title for the priest's wife, Matushka does everything but give absolution and elevate the gifts. In other words, she can't celebrate the liturgy as the prime celebrant, but she is there in the supporting role throughout the priest's ministry. Also, the Matushka is the leader of the women in a traditional Orthodox community. She counsels the women. She works with the women. She helps them out when they're pregnant, when they have new children. Matushka Olga was also the village midwife, so she delivered hundreds of babies. And she had a special ministry to the poor, to those who were widows, to the children who are orphaned, to those in need. And that's an extremely important thing. She was remembered for her kindness, for her mercy, for her generosity, for her love, for coming to visit people when they were in need, and to try and satisfy those needs whenever possible. She lived sacrificially, self-sacrificially, for the sake of the other. She showed what it means that as an Orthodox Christian, one of the most important things we can possibly do spiritually is overcome selfishness. We have to cast out selfishness from our hearts in all of its various forms. Self-centeredness, selfishness, self-love is the very essence and the core of sin. And Matushka Olga manifested that. This is something very important for us to remember, because the world tells us that it's all about me. It's all about selfishness. It's all about what I want, what I feel like, what I want to look like, who I want to be, and who I think I am. And it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. God made you a man or a woman, period. And it's important to give thanks for that. Because for both for men and for women, there are unique gifts. And men and women are complementary. And that's so important to remember, that coming together brings about a kind of a wholeness of life, one that's fruitful, one that brings forth children, one that raises those children with love, with compassion, with mercy, and with discipline. Because discipline is an essential part of our family life. And without discipline and kids running wild and living in complete selfishness, you not only have chaos, you build personalities that are going to fail in life. They'll fail in marriage, they'll fail in relationships, and end up being very unhappy. Matushka Olga loved her children. At the end of her life, she came down with cancer, was cared for by her family, and she died in 1979. But that didn't end her ministry. Her ministry expanded. A couple of years after she died, she started appearing in family photographs. You'd have the whole family lined up in front of the Christmas tree, all of her kids, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody. But they looked, because there was somebody else, and there was Grandma. Now, there's an old Yupik tradition that the elders who have passed come and look in the windows of the homes of their relatives who are celebrating feast days and things like that. And so initially they just thought, well, that's our tradition, and that's, well, what's happening. But then she started appearing to people who had no knowledge that there was such a thing as a Yupik, had never been to Alaska, probably thought Eskimos lived in igloos. They don't. I know one woman. She was one of the first to come forth with her story. That she was visited by this little tiny Oriental-looking woman. And what's unique is that she had grown up in New York City and was raised to be a prostitute. And so by the time she finally escaped that life, because she'd been in it her whole life, she was 21 and had never left New York City. And of course was pretty messed up. That's the kind of life that destroys people. So this little tiny lady, dressed a little strangely, which was, you know how sometimes on a hoodie they have pockets that come like this, and you put. Well, that's a traditional Yupik style of garment. And this little lady who came to visit her had that kind of a jacket. And she was full of love, full of compassion. And her love radiated out from her and not only brought consolation to my friend, but she took her by the hand. This was in a vision, kind of a lucid dream vision, and led her through a traditional Yupik house. Now, this woman had never heard of a Yupik, and didn't know what a Yupik house was. It's a log cabin that's covered by sod with very tall ceilings. And she took her by the hand, and with gentleness and kindness and love, right through the house, out the back door, into the tundra, and took her to the Mother of God, who healed her. Who healed her to such a degree that she prays for all of the men that used her. If you can believe, by name. Has forgiven everyone. And so she was transformed. When she came forth with her story, it resonated with hundreds of other people. And it turns out that this little lady who came to visit her, she found out later her name was Olga. And and as things got around, she found out who she was. Matushka Olga from Alaska. And that she wasn't Oriental, she was a Native American. Within a year, there were websites about Mother Olga. There were accounts and stories of people having been visited by her. Hymns were written for her, and a kathes to her was written. Canons were written. So people began to venerate her without any official ecclesiastical recognition. But this is how canonizations are done in the Orthodox Church. It's the recognition of a popular veneration. When I was in office, I was given the opportunity to go up and venerate her grave. Now, this was about 2010. Now, when Mother Olga had been buried, the date of her death is October 27th on the old calendar, November 9th on the new calendar. It's midwinter already in Alaska. Usually the rivers are frozen solid. There's snow, deep snow laying on the ground. The ground is frozen to several feet deep. But when she was buried, it was warm and a pleasant breeze, and the river melted, which meant that hundreds of people from the Yupik community, multiple villages up and down the Kuskokwim, could come to her funeral because she was known and loved by them. And strangest of all, or of a miracle, as it were, during her funeral, there were thousands of birds circling around. Now, there were no birds in Alaska in November, but there were thousands of birds circling around the church. And then when I came, we went out, we did a panakita for her. There were about 300 people from the village who came, a good, more than half. And we did the panakita in the church, and then we went out to her grave to sing Memory Eternal. There was so much grace pouring out of her grave. I still feel it. There were thousands of birds circling around the village, over the cemetery. After singing Memory Eternal, the entire village broke into singing the Paschal hymns. All in Yupik, of course. But it was Pascha in August, the feast of the resurrection. Mother Olga, Matushka Olga, is a great saint that God has revealed in our times. Not only one who would console and heal those who had been abused, those women who had been abused and hurt and cast off, but anybody who calls upon her. She was an example for Matushkas. The position of a Matushka is undoubtedly, outside of the monastic world, the most important ministry that women have in the Orthodox Church. And it's a very, very active ministry, without which the Church doesn't function as well. Here we have 3 Matushkas in our parish. She's an example of self-sacrificial love. As a revelation of Christ. As every saint is an icon of Christ, so Matushka Olga is an icon of Christ. Through her deeds, through her love, through her faith, and through the grace that God pours forth, which is itself the manifestation of his love, his unconditional love, his unconditional forgiveness, his unconditional acceptance of people, no matter how much trouble they've gotten themselves into or have become victims of. So, Holy Mother Olga, pray to God for us.